In 1957, a lonely man in rural Wisconsin shocked the nation to its core and began the greatest wave of serial murder the world has ever seen. The depravity of this man knew no limits. He was Ed Gein.
Certain serial killers have become these successfully become the bogeyman of their generation. Certainly Albert Fish was the bogeyman of his generation, and Ed Gein was the bogeyman of his generation. The press attention to his case was enormous, and he certainly ushered in what would then become an open floodgate of aberrant murderers in not only the United States, but other places in the world.
Edward Gein was a cannibal. He practiced necrophilia. He robbed body parts from graves. He killed people and dressed them out like deer. He even shared the venison with his neighbors, and they were literally sickened when they discovered that it wasn't venison at all. And yet, Edward Gein is hardly a household word. Believe me, if he had done the same heinous crimes in New York City or Los Angeles, everybody would know his name, just like they know Son of Sam or the Sunset Strip Killer. But Edward Gein killed outside of Plainfield, Wisconsin, population 632, small town, breadbasket America.
Born in 1906, Ed Gein and his brother Henry grew up on a Wisconsin farm that looked like this. Their father was a drunkard, and their mother was a religious zealot who taught young Ed that all women were bad. All were prostitutes, except for herself, of course. The brothers tried to make their mother happy, but she was rarely pleased with her precious boys. She often verbally abused them, believing that they were destined to become failures like their drunken father without proper guidance. During their teens and throughout their early adulthood, the boys remained detached from people. Working their farmstead, they only had each other for company. Then, the older Henry Gein began to reject his mother's distorted view of the world and Ed's perverse attachment to her. He even spoke ill of her to his mortified brother, an act for which Henry would soon pay the ultimate price. While fighting a brush fire in 1944, Cain slew Abel. Although Ed was able to lead the authorities directly to Henry's body, a body which had bruises around the head, the event was dismissed as an accident. With the father already dead, Ed finally had his mother all to himself. But not for long. Within a year, she would be dead from a heart attack.
His mother was this incredibly powerful figure who dominated his existence, and her death both devastated him and let his inner illness free.
Now this rural farmhouse was about to become an infamous house of horrors, a house that preserved his mother's dead body as a shrine. Soon, the lonely Ed began making nightly raids into the local cemeteries, digging up corpses of women and bringing the bodies back to his home.
They talked about him having a box full of vulvas. And that just kind of stuck in my mind and creeped me out more than anything else, was that he would dig up dead women and cut out their sexual parts and put them in a box. I just can't. There's people who kill people, right? And everybody has anger and everybody in their lives at one time or another. It's like, oh, I could kill that person or whatever. And then you have these sort of rapists/killers, these people who sexually utilize a person and then dispose of them, that pretty common, And again, you can't imagine doing it, but you can at least say, oh, I can see it. I can understand on some sick level where they're coming. But a guy who digs people up and takes their sexual organs and puts them in a box, boy, that is out there.
By 1954, necrophilia, the sexual attraction and use of corpses, was no longer enough. Ed shot a local tavern keeper, Mary Hogan, and brought her 200-pound corpse back to his house of horrors. 3 years later, he killed another woman, a 58-year-old grandmother, Bernice Warden. But this time, suspicion fell on Ed. And when police broke into this rural farmhouse, they found the most horrific scene of all time. They found Warden's decapitated body, her headless corpse hung upside down. The body was dressed out like that of a deer. Looking further, the authorities found chairs upholstered with human skin, soup bowls fashioned from skulls, faces mounted on the wall like hunting trophies, and a full female skin that Gein confessed he enjoyed dressing himself in and pretending he was his mother. In the refrigerator were organs, parts of which Weird Ed had been preserving to eat. In all, parts from 13 different women were identified in the old farmhouse.
You take these bizarre cases where there's this cannibalistic element, where the murderer will actually mutilate, perhaps even consume body parts, clearly. In virtually every one of these instances, what you're dealing with is a murderer who is so disturbed psychiatrically that he feels the need to experience the toxic fruits of his labor. He almost needs to take this into his own body as a way to confirm that he's killed this person. It makes it that much more real. And that's a serious psychiatric illness.
Indeed, after 10 years in a mental hospital, Gein was judged competent to stand trial. Ed was found guilty. He lived out his life in a mental hospital, where he died of natural causes at the age of 77. But by this time, he had become immortalized in Alfred Hitchcock's brilliant psychological thriller, Psycho. And in 1991 was in part the inspiration